I'm greatly honored and excited to introduce Dr. Joe Bouler. Joe Bouler is the Nomalini and Olivier Professor of Education at Stanford University and the Marie Curie Professor of Mathematics Education in England. She was a mathematics teacher in London Comprehensive Schools. She is an elected fellow of the Royal Society of Arts and a former president of the International Organization for Women in Mathematics Education. She is the recipient of several awards for promoting equity in mathematics leadership and the author of 14 books and numerous research articles. Professor Bouler is a White House presenter on women and girls. She co-founded the Center UCubed to give teachers, parents, and students the resources and ideas they need to inspire and excite students about mathematics. Any of you who did not visit this site, I strongly encourage you to. She is currently co-leading a K-12 data science initiative. I hope we'll have some time to talk about this today. And she was named one of the 8 educators changing the face of education by the BBC. So Professor Bouler, there's so much we can learn from you. And I would like to open this conversation with a statement that you often say, that anyone can improve in mathematics. Now this contradicts what is widely accepted, that mathematics is for some people. And I'm interested to hear about how you came to adopt this belief, or perhaps fact.
Mm-hmm. Well, the evidence that we can all learn any level of mathematics mainly comes from neuroscience. I work with neuroscientists at Stanford, and studies of the brain show that our brains are in constant state of change. Every time we learn something, one of 3 things happens in the brain. One is when we first learn something, a new brain pathway is formed, and the deeper we learn, the stronger that brain pathway becomes. The second possibility is you form connections between pathways. And the third possibility is you strengthen pathways. So those 3 things are happening every time we learn. And that's how people develop mathematical pathways. So it's not, as many people believe, that you're born with a maths brain or not. That has been shown very clearly to be a myth. And as well as the evidence from neuroscience, we have cases of people. In my new book, Limitless Mind, I tell the story of a young Australian boy who grew up in first grade. His parents were told he was learning disabled, and he had a very low IQ and he couldn't think well. And he graduated from Oxford with a doctorate in applied mathematics a couple of years ago. So there's overwhelming evidence that with the right messages and the right teaching, anybody can reach the highest levels of mathematics.
So you believe everybody could reach highest levels of mathematics, but then what would it take from the student, from the teacher, from the education system to actually promote this agenda?
That's a good question, because almost every message we give about maths in our society, in our teaching, is the opposite of what I think we should be doing. So first of all, we have to counter the myths that some people can learn and some people can't, as I've talked about. Mm-hmm. Then we have to start valuing what's the most important times for the brain, which is actually when we're struggling and making mistakes. That is the time of the most brain growth. And students in classrooms feel bad when they make a mistake and they think, I'm not a math person, but it's actually the best time for our brains. So, in the schooling system, we give a lot of messages that struggle and mistakes are bad by the tests that students are taking. So we need to change that message. Teachers, I was a teacher, we're sort of trained to have students get work correct when we should want our students to struggle. And when I teach students, I say to them, I want you to struggle. I want you to make mistakes. And I give them difficult work and I say to them, this is good for your brain. And when they sort of look at me and say, oh, this is so hard, I say to them, that's great. That is the feeling of your brain working really hard. And then another idea we have to give about maths is brain neuroscientists at Stanford, Vinod Menon and his group, have shown that every time we work on a maths question, there are 5 different brain pathways that are at work, and 2 of them are visual pathways. So we actually really want to think visually about maths. And we also want these different brain pathways to be connecting with each other. And brain connections happen when we think about maths in different ways. So I could see a problem in numbers, but if I also see it visually, that will cause brain connections. Also, if I write about it in words, that's a different area of the brain. Or if I physically move to represent a mathematical idea, that's another part of the brain. So when we give students what I think of as a multi-dimensional experience of mathematics, where they're encountering and experiencing maths visually, creatively, it's not only much more engaging, but it's encouraging all of these brain connections. But in schools, as you probably know, maths is often just numbers. And we need to change that. We need to make it this multi-dimensional experience.
So we now know that all students, maybe except, those with a very specific learning disability, but all other students can achieve at the highest levels in maths in all levels of school, K right up to the end of high school. And other countries that believe this about students do a lot better than we do in the US or the UK, so countries such as Japan. So here's the irony. Children can develop half a brain or change their brain significantly, yet we think kids can't develop a few neurons they need to learn algebra. Many people think that some kids are capable or smart or high ability, whatever you want to call it, and some are not. Now, we all know students come into maths classes with some of them finding work easier, some finding it really challenging. But that doesn't reflect their potential for future work. What it tells you is that students have been having different experiences since childhood, and some of those experiences have been causing synapses to fire and some haven't. So as teachers, our job is really to disrupt the trajectories of students who haven't had challenging experiences, and it's to provide all students with the richest and most challenging environment possible. If their brain can change in 3 weeks, think what students can do over the course of a year with the right materials. So to recap, brain research tells us a number of things. It tells us every child can excel in mathematics in school from elementary to high school. It tells us about the potential of the brain to grow, no matter where students start from, and that potential is huge. It tells us that every new learning experience changes your ability. Even though we think of students as having a certain ability or not, being high or low, every experience can change that ability. So we use fixed ability language all the time, high and low kids, and we need to rethink that. So scientists know that kids can develop the wiring to learn any maths in school, but many teachers and parents still believe in a kind of natural ability, and a number of schools, probably most schools, are still set up on outdated models of fixed ability thinking.
Okay, so you talk about those ideas about students struggling, about students making mistakes in classrooms, about making connections, about hearing different ideas and connecting between them, which all sound wonderful. And we did hear them in the past also. But they do not enter schools. Now, they do not enter schools sufficiently.
Yeah.
And I wonder, teachers do want the best for their students. And I wonder, why do you think this is so?
I think we've had trouble getting these ideas into the system more because teachers don't get opportunities to learn them. So they were taught in a certain way, and then when they teach, they repeat the ways that they learned maths. And our system is really not set up well to help teachers learn. As an academic in a university, we do research and we have the evidence, but we're really encouraged to publish it in academic journals, which teachers don't get access to. This is why we formed ucubed.org, our website, which is getting these ideas out to teachers and others. And it's been pretty amazing. We have a lot of free resources on our site we've found that in a few years, we've had 43 million people come to the site, and we have free lessons that introduce kids to visual, creative maths, and they are used in 2/3 of schools in the US now. But it's still not enough. We have teachers say to us, oh, you know, we used your lessons. It's called the Week of Inspirational Maths. And all the kids' lights were on, and it was fantastic, and they were engaged. And then the week finished, and we got the textbooks out, and all the lights went out again, and they were not interested. So now we've been trying to get these ideas to go across the whole school year. So yeah, I think we've worked with teachers who themselves have been given very negative messages about maths. Mm-hmm. One of the initiatives I was involved in, I was asked if I would work with teachers in the Central Valley of California, which is a largely agricultural area, very low achievement. And I worked with 5th grade teachers for a year, and it was amazing. So they took my online class, they started doing maths differently. And even within that year, by the end of the year, their students achieved at significantly higher levels on all the state tests. But what we saw happen was, first of all, the teachers changed their own views about themselves. So they had been given the message, you're not a maths person. And they thought maths was a set of procedures. So they started to think visually about maths and give kids visual problems. And I was presenting with one of the principals of one of their schools, and he said to the audience, my teachers used to be afraid of maths and they would rush through it. Now, he said, they stay after school discussing all the visual ways they can think about 18 times 5. And so what was really interesting to me was those teachers changed their teaching, but first they had to change their own relationship with maths and their own views about themselves.
And you're saying that they could adopt different ways of teaching to the regular curriculum. I mean, to teach all topics and regular curriculum with the students taking the state exams.
Yeah, I mean, one recommendation I give to teachers is, so they have these standards in the US that really make maths look like a set of methods. The standards themselves are a problem, I think. And then they get these textbooks that look like lots of methods and lots of practice. And they can use those books. But I say to teachers, first of all, just choose a few problems from each page and go into much more depth with them. Students don't need to do it 40 times. They need this rich experience. So, and then for each problem, ask students, what do you think? Have them start talking to each other about what they think, and ask them to draw the problem visually. And so I do think you can use what I think of as bad textbooks, but you have to be prepared to give kids more time to really go into depth and think visually. It's better if they have good resources instead of those books. That would be my favorite thing, if they could get better, rich tasks to use in classrooms.
Yes, oh, definitely. Yeah, there's always the issue of time versus, how much we really succeed in, doing one lesson.
Yeah. How long are maths lessons in Israel? How long in time?
So every lesson is about 45 minutes. Sometimes you have 2 lessons, like double lessons, which is an hour and a half. But the regular lesson is 45 minutes. And
which is, long enough to engage students in a rich, open task. Definitely. I often also recommend to people that if you want to teach differently in the way that we're describing, instead of going through all the methods in books, and to start and think, what are the big ideas of this year? And to map out a set of really big ideas that are foundational, that link other areas of maths, and And then to think, what's a really rich, deep task that gets to these big ideas? And to start from that. So the year has all of these really rich tasks and give students the time that they need to work on them. Maybe you have 2 45-minute lessons, maybe 3. And then see what's, in the rest of the time, you can use other questions and tasks, but really make sure that your teaching is oriented around those big ideas instead of sets of methods.
So if you think of the greatest difficulties that teachers and schools would have to try and adopt those ideas that you suggest. So one of the things you were saying is their own beliefs about what is mathematics and, who are they as mathematics learners. So that's one of the things you stated. But I guess there are more difficulties because, we see that it's so difficult to make this change.
I think it's definitely a difficult one because society has different ideas about what maths is, and we're really bombarded with the idea of the genius who is often this, white male. And many people get the idea, maths is an exclusive sort of elite subject. This is why one of the reasons I love this new movement in data science, because, being able to work with data and see it visually and make sense of all the data in the world that's now there is so important for our students. And I love that data science is being rolled out as a new subject without these ideas of exclusivity, that it is just for some people. And so infusing that into maths, I think, has lots of benefits.
So you would see it as a new mathematics topic or as another topic, like learning mathematics and learning data science, or kind of slowly exchanging what is the mathematics that we learn?
I think some of both. I think one thing we could do is take a really clear look at the mathematics we're teaching students. With the knowledge that we live in a computer world that has technology. What do they really need to learn and understand? I think that would help us get rid of a lot of methods they no longer need. And then, we could bring in much more important mathematics of making sense of data. And it does draw on mathematical topics that we've traditionally taught around statistics, but it's different to that because data science is not taught as a set of methods, as statistics often is. It starts with a data set, and a data set that is meaningful to kids' lives, that they can ask questions of and investigate. So I do think should be an important part of mathematics. I also think it goes beyond maths because anybody could take a data perspective on their teaching. A science teacher could, bring in rich data on oceans and all sorts of things. PE teacher, sports teacher could have kids collecting data on their, physical bodies and movement. So both, I think, is the answer. I think it could play an important role in mathematics and also go beyond it.
So it's kind of a rearranging the mathematics that we learn, and maybe even learn some of the topics that we do learn in mathematics, but without this elite perspective that it's
that's so important. The idea that only some people can be good at maths, I think, has led to systems like tracking and sorting kids into different pathways. I just think that's very wrong, and we don't know what those young students are able to learn and do. So many people are pushed into a lower level pathway when their brains could do anything over the next 5 years. And so we don't know what students can do. And I think those systems need to change, because that having tracked systems sends a very strong message to students that our brains are fixed and we know what you can do. And that's, a very damaging message, I think.
But maybe a different perspective in tracking, like not in 3rd or 5th grade, but maybe in 8th grade, is that different students are interested in different things, and maybe not all need to learn advanced level mathematics and can learn, or maybe more applied and less applied. I don't know, but maybe there is something about personalization in a sense with tracking. I'm not sure.
Yeah, sure. I agree. If it's up to the students, that would be a great step forward, and not somebody deciding, you're going into that track and you're going into that one, if it was done on interest. But I would say a lot of students think they don't want to go into a high level maths because they've not had a good experience with maths and they've only seen procedural maths. I would feel better about students choosing if they'd, say, taken a course in data science or seen maths as a visual creative subject, and then let them choose. I think we'd see a lot more students choosing to go forward in maths.
Yeah, it's a big challenge, I think, to teach math in a way that everybody feels like they can do it, that that they can be good in mathematics, that it's not about getting the right answers, that it's about thinking. I mean, we could all gain so much.
Hi everybody, thanks for working with me today. We're going to do a little math activity where I'm going to ask you to look at a collection of dots. I'm going to flash it up and take it off, and I'm going to do that because I don't want you to count the dots. So I want you to figure out how many there are without counting. Can everybody see this screen? Are you ready? All right, so just all together at first, how many dots did we see? 7. There were 7 dots. So who would like to tell me how they saw or where they saw the 7? Let me put them back on the screen in case we want to refer back to them. Yeah, do you want to go first?
So I saw 3 on the outside, and I was like, oh, that's 6. And then the one in the middle would be the 7th one.
Okay. What's your name?
Bahar.
So, Bahar, did you see it like this?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
I saw 3 dots, and then I saw that center dot, and so my brain kind of went, what? Because I was thinking about like the outside, kind of like Bahar was thinking. So then I tried, really quickly to try and think about it all together, and so I just counted like all of the outside like in pairs.
Okay.
And then I counted the 1.
Down the center?
Dots down the center, like those 2 lines, and then there's dots on the outside.
Okay. So this is the center, and these are the dots down the side? Great. All right, so this is kind of the center dot?
Yeah.
Is that right? And then
there's lines, and then there's dots on the outside.
those. That's it? Great, thank you. So thanks everybody for doing this with me. The reason I wanted you to see this is math is such an open, visual, creative subject, and you can see here there were so many different ways that people saw just a collection of 7 dots. And I think that's a lovely thing about math. A lot of people think math just has one way of doing it and one solution, but really everything, even just the numbers in math, can be seen in so many different ways, and I think that's really lovely. So thanks very much for working with me.
So you're one of the writers of the new framework for mathematics teaching in California. And I would be happy to hear a little bit more about this new framework.
Yeah. So the state of California, which is a pretty large state, as big as some countries in its number of students, regularly goes through a kind of review of the maths advice it's giving to teachers and others. Publishers look at it, all sorts of people do. And so they've appointed 5 writers, I am one of them, to rewrite the California maths framework. And so we're putting out a lot of ideas in this new framework. One is the teaching of maths as a set of big ideas, which is something I talked about already, not a set of methods. And we wanted to exemplify that for people, and we couldn't exemplify it with all of mathematics, K-12, because we're just a team of 5. So we chose 2 areas of maths to exemplify. One is data science, and we chose that very deliberately to share the ideas of data science more widely. The other we chose is...
Excuse me, just for a second. So data science, for which grades did you choose data science?
Data science K-12.
K-12. Oh, K-12. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because, so one of the ideas we're sharing is what's called a data talk. This is something UCube Centers created. Just put up in front of students at the start of a lesson a data visualization and ask them questions. What are you curious about? What do you see? And we know that teachers can do this K-12. There are great data visualizations for little kids. They don't have numbers, they're just visual. And then as you go up the levels, the data visualizations can become more sophisticated, but it's a great activity for all of K-12. And just having all students of different ages be more familiar with what is data and why is it important. And then as kids get older, we're also recommending that there's a new high school course called data science.
Okay.
We have in the US really focused only on calculus, particularly for higher achieving students. And there's a movement, not just in California, in other areas as well, an awareness that we should be giving kids different mathematical options. Data science could be one. Mathematical modeling is another one that is being developed as an option for students. So it's not just calculus or nothing. There's other areas of maths that can be valued.
But is it because calculus, so I can see the benefit of the other topics, but is it because calculus became inaccessible to so many that, only a small percentage actually take calculus and succeed? Or because we really think that those ideas are not so relevant today? I mean, maybe we can, kind of bring it in, as something that is more accessible.
Well, I personally, I love calculus. I think it's a very rich topic. I think it's taught in a very narrow way, like everything else. And if it were taught through computer tools and visualizations, it could be much more accessible and interesting to people. So I don't think we throw out calculus, but I do think calculus could be much better than it is now. Yeah. But calculus, I mean, certainly in the US, I'd be interested to know how it works in Israel. The fact that calculus has stood at the top of the tree and been taught in such a narrow way has led to all the tracking of students in younger years.
Yeah.
So it has a lot of problems with it, and a lot of inequities have led from it.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, you have separate courses. In Israel, we learn geometry and algebra and calculus. I mean, it's the mathematics teacher, and it's not separate courses.
That's good. That's good. Same as in English.
I think it's I think
math. Yes.
Yeah, a more holistic view.
Yes.
Definitely. Now, all those ideas, if we think about the teacher preparation, the teacher education that is required to, I mean, if I'm a new teacher and I went to the university to study mathematics and I taught, and I studied mathematics, I majored in mathematics, learning, just copying from the blackboard and then trying to figure out what was there. What should change in those mathematics education programs to promote such learning?
And Matt, who takes these programs?
So they're different. In Israel, we have 2 different tracks. You either go to the university to major in mathematics in the university, and then you take a short 1 or 1.5 years of mathematics teaching to get your certificate, or you go to a 4-year college for education and you get your BEd in mathematics teaching. So it's 2 different tracks, and it's different people often that that take them.
Yeah, it's that those in the US too. Those 2 different ways of becoming a teacher. So we need to get these ideas to everybody, not just K-12 teachers. And mathematicians in universities also need to be teaching in this much more multidimensional way. And of course, we really need to change maths professors' ideas about who can learn maths. They particularly have these ideas that it's for the gifted people. There was a really interesting study that looked into how damaging is it if professors believe you have to have a gift to be successful. And it was so fascinating. They found, first of all, that maths professors believed that more than anyone else, that you need a gift to be successful. But they also found that the more that any field believed that, the fewer women and the fewer people of color were in that field. So very direct link between believing that only some people can achieve and all the inequities that we see in our system. So we need maths professors to change their thinking also. And that's why this change we're trying to bring about is so hard, because it involves so many levels of the system. In our work with getting data science into K-12, we're also trying to get to the colleges so that they start recognizing that as an important course. Because if the colleges select on taking calculus, we will have problems if students take data science instead. So just to say, there's a lot of, when you take on educational change, there's many places we need to work. So mathematicians, I know a few that teach differently, and it's amazing when that happens in the college level. Steve Strogatz at Cornell is an amazing mathematician who also understands that giving his students rich, exciting tasks changes them as people. And we have videos of Steve's teaching on our YouTube site, but he's pretty unusual in the world of mathematicians. And so, yeah, we need to get these changes into colleges. I feel that the School of Education route that some of your teachers take, educators are often more aware of these ideas and are more able to give a better mathematics preparation.
Yes. Often what we find happening is that you teach first in the mathematics courses. It's more difficult to use those more innovative ideas, but in mathematics education courses we do teach them. But then when they go to school, to work in schools, even during their studies, so the teachers tell them, we don't really have time for that. You don't to let them struggle, to let them have problems. Yeah.
This is how the traditional faulty system continues.
Yes.
But even when in a education course at college you're teaching these ideas, then they get placed into schools that are using the old methods, and it's very hard. One of the things that we have worked on in our own teacher education course at Stanford is to handpick schools more carefully and have a few student teachers just go to a small number of schools. So we're really trying to get them to see in their teaching what the ideas we're sharing. The other thing that's been very useful over the years is I've been teaching using these ideas school students. And for 2 summers at Stanford now, we've brought in collections of middle school students, and we've taught them maths in these different ways, visually, creatively, telling them there's no such thing as a maths person, anyone can learn. And it's been amazing. We brought in 84 students a couple of years ago, taught them in 18 lessons, and they improved their achievement on state tests over that 18 lesson period by the equivalent of 2.8 years.
Wow.
So it completely changed these students. They started to think differently about themselves. They started to see maths differently. And even though the test that we used as a measure was nothing like the way we were learning maths together, They still completely, the average increase for each student was 50% on that test.
Amazing.
So that allowed us to video the teaching and to have those videos be made available to other teachers. So these are all methods that we're using to break open that traditional system. Maybe they don't see the teaching in their student teaching classroom, but they see it on video at least. But change is hard in a system as solid as education. It's a tough one.
Yes, definitely. Yes. So you're saying if we are to go through a revolution in mathematics teaching, it's the work with the mathematicians and with the teachers and with the new teachers
and with parents
and students and with parents. The whole system.
We try to get at all those different levels, and when you do, it can be magical. I mean, we have areas we work with. We've given talks to parents. We've done training with the teachers. The students have taken the online class I have, and we've seen amazing things come about. Inequities are broken down. Many more students go forward in mathematics. So, it can be done, but it's a lot.
It's a lot of work. Yeah, and sometimes it's a big wonder, because you think of the excitement, the real excitement of working on problems. And especially now I think of middle school students who have the basics and do not yet have the matriculation exams, and could actually enjoy working with their peers and convincing one another and thinking out loud and thinking in different ways and making mistakes and trying to fix it. And it should be.
I'm glad you mentioned them working together, because that's a really important part that I haven't talked about. Kids working in groups, figuring things out together, communicating mathematically is so important. And maths classrooms, kids are often sitting individually, working through books. That collaboration piece is really a critical part as well.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure for thinking, and also, it's this middle age, it's the age of middle school students, which, you kind of win both. They want to work with each other, and better that way. So, yes.
Absolutely. I mean, there are so many ways we can transform students' ideas about maths. Just having them work together is one way. Seeing maths visually is another. Changing their mindsets about what they can do is another. In all of these ways, I feel that they have that experience in other classrooms, like English. It's maths really that has not been giving these ideas to students over the years.
Yes, wonderful. So these are all wonderful ideas that I really hope we can, share with you what has been adopted in Israel in our system. So thank you very much for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.